behind the dense veil of centuries, where the yellowed pages of chronicles intertwine with the threads of ancient legend, lives one of the most disturbing mysteries of all human civilization: the Order of the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. The Templars. Who were they in truth? On the surface, humble monks who had taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Yet beneath the coarse wool of their white mantles lay the cold gleam of chainmail, and deep within their souls burned the fire of forbidden knowledge. The very knowledge the church did not dare to speak aloud. They embodied living contradiction. Devout killers, powerful paupers, righteous men who dared to peer into the very mouth of the occult abyss. It all begins in 1119, on the sun-scorched earth of the Holy City. 9 French knights under the leadership of Hugues de Payens appeared before the King of Jerusalem, with a mission that was noble yet strangely vague: to protect pilgrims on the roads of the Holy Land. But here history poses its first uncomfortable question, one that the most meticulous scholars cannot answer. For 9 full years the Brotherhood did not accept a single new soul into its ranks. 9 men are for thousands of pilgrims, for hundreds of miles of deadly roads. It was a facade, a magnificent, carefully constructed illusion concealing something else entirely. The king granted them as their dwelling the most hallowed place on all the earth, the southern wing of the palace on the Temple Mount, standing directly above the remains of the magnificent temple of King Solomon, and there, sheltered from curious eyes, while the world believed they were riding patrol along dusty roads, the 9 knights stepped into the darkness. They descended into the stone depths of the mountain, into the legendary stables of Solomon, into the dust of thousands of years of forgotten civilizations. But they did not merely settle there. They dug, through layers of stone, through strata of buried ages, guided either by secret plans or by the voice of ancient prophecies. What drew them forward in the oppressive silence of those underground chambers, broken only by the muffled clang of tools? The Ark of the Covenant, the true cross of the Lord, or something fundamentally different? Artifacts of antediluvian civilizations and manuscripts bearing formulas of sacred geometry, capable of rewriting the very laws of reality. Legends and scattered fragments of secret manuscripts agree on one point. In the darkness of those excavations, they found something that reshaped their very essence. The poor knights who had slept on cold stone rose to the surface as bearers of a power, unknown to any earthly throne, unknown to any crown. As if by some invisible command, the gates of every European palace suddenly swung open before them. The Pope himself clothed them in the armor of absolute inviolability. Henceforth no king, no archbishop held any power over them, only the pontiff alone, and perhaps that force which they had carried out from the depths of the Jerusalem darkness. What secret, what soul-chilling truth did they whisper into the ear of the Vicar of Christ? That he granted them unlimited dominion over the fates of the world. Their symbols to this day cause researchers of hidden knowledge to freeze in stunned silence. Their seal, 2 knights upon a single horse, an embodiment of voluntary poverty, or an encoded message about the polarity of existence, light and darkness, spirit and flesh, the manifest world and the world concealed, and the celebrated white mantle, cleft by a blood-red cross. The whiteness embodied the purity of the spirit, while the crimson cross for the uninitiated signified readiness for a martyr's death. For the brothers, however, it was the sign of alchemical rubedo, the supreme stage of the great work, the transformation of the spirit through the crucible of blood and fire. And so from the darkness there arose a shadow empire, an order that had wrapped all of Europe in a web of impregnable fortresses, constructed in precise accordance with the canons of mystical geometry. They became the founders of the world's banking system, yet gold served them only as a means. Their true and priceless treasure remained the secret. They became guardians of the boundary between worlds, keepers of the keys to gates never destined to open before mortal men. So then, let us shake the dust of millennia from our feet, and follow them into the darkness of the Temple Mount. Listen without looking away, for the echo of their footsteps still wanders to this day through the catacombs of history, carrying within it a warning. Some secrets possess a will of their own, and they wait with patience for their hour. Here is the translated text for the narrator, with all numbers written in words, all technical directions removed. But let us stop. Let us hold our breath and peer into that absolute darkness beneath the Temple Mount. 9 years. 9 long years, 9 nights never saw the sun. What does it mean to dig beneath the ruins of the Holy of Holies? It is not simply moving stones. It means descending the steps of time into an era when entirely different laws governed the world. Historians of Orthodox science avert their gaze in embarrassment, claiming that the Templars were searching for gold or for sacred relics for pilgrims. But those who know how to read between the lines of ancient grimoires know the true truth. The Knights penetrated a vast network of underground passages, leading to what is known as the Well of Souls, the space beneath the foundation stone of all creation. Legend holds that it was there, in pitch darkness untrodden by human feet since the destruction of the first temple, that Hugues de Payens and his brothers broke seals that should never have been touched. They did not find gold, they found knowledge, ancient scrolls of the Essenes, copper plates covered with symbols of sacred geometry, revelations passed down from the very builder of the temple, the great master Hiram Abiff, and perhaps they discovered something far more terrifying: technologies for controlling human consciousness and formulas for interacting with the ether, the invisible energy that permeates the entire universe. When in 1128 these 9 men, gaunt and hollow-eyed with feverish fire, finally set foot on the soil of France, they were no longer simply warriors. They have become carriers of a virus of secret knowledge. And that virus began rapidly and irreversibly transforming the face of all of Europe. The first to fall under their influence was Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most powerful and enigmatic figures of the entire Middle Ages. A saint, a mystic, the Grey Cardinal of the Vatican. Why did this ascetic, who despised luxury and violence, suddenly become the ardent patron of warrior killers? Because Bernard understood the essential truth. The Templars had brought back the keys. At the famous Council of Troyes in 1129, he personally composed their rule. A rule containing exactly 72 articles. A coincidence? For the uninitiated, perhaps. But for those who know, the number 72 is the great mystery of the Kabbalah. 72 names of God, 72 steps on Jacob's ladder leading to the heavens. The rule of the Templars was not simply a code of military conduct. It was an alchemical formula for transforming a man into the perfect instrument of the higher powers. And here begins the greatest magic that reshaped our world. Follow the chronology carefully. The moment the Templars returned from Jerusalem, an inconceivable and inexplicable explosion occurs across Europe. The heavy, squat, and gloomy Romanesque architecture suddenly dies away. As if from nowhere, Gothic is born. Pointed arches soaring toward the heavens, stained glass transforming sunlight into divine radiance, flying buttresses challenging the very law of gravity. Where did engineering calculations of such monstrous complexity suddenly come from in the dark, barely literate medieval Europe? The answer is hidden in stone. The great Gothic cathedrals, Chartres, Notre Dame de Paris, Amiens, were financed and secretly designed by architects, bound inextricably to the order of the Knights Templar. They were not building churches, they were creating colossal stone resonators. Look at Chartres Cathedral. It stands on the site of an ancient Celtic sanctuary. Its proportions reproduce to the millimeter the proportions of the Ark of the Covenant. and the Temple of Solomon, the very blueprints the Knights had carried out of the darkness of Jerusalem. The Templars encoded their revelations in stone, erecting machines for the transformation of human energy. Anyone who crossed the threshold of a Gothic cathedral was immediately subjected to acoustic waves and refractions of light that induced in them a state of altered consciousness. The Templars had mastered the art of governing souls through geometry, but the wisdom of Solomon granted them power not only over stone and spirit, it granted them power over matter, over gold. The order that had taken a vow of absolute poverty, whose knights swore not to possess even an extra pair of boots, suddenly became wealthier than all the kings of Europe combined. How? They created what the world would later call the banking system, but in their hands, it was the purest occult practice. Imagine a pilgrim or a merchant hands over his sack of gold at a Templar preceptory in London. In return, he receives a small sheet of parchment covered in mysterious ciphers, signatures, and seal impressions. With this scrap of skin he crosses all of Europe, swarming with brigands, makes his way to Jerusalem, presents the document to another Templar in a white cloak, and receives his gold back. For us today this is an ordinary check, but for a man of the 12th century it was genuine black magic. How could a scrap of dead calf skin be transformed into pure gold on the other side of the world? The Templars were the first to grasp the greatest secret of illusion. Money is not metal. Money is faith. Money is energy. By constructing their network of fortress banks, they cast an energy web across all Christian lands. They lent gold to the kings of England and France. They financed wars and the construction of entire cities. Monarchs and the popes of Rome themselves became debtors to the poor knights of Christ. They became a state within a state, an invisible empire. Their fleet stood in the port of La Rochelle and answered to no admiral. Their castles were built according to perfect octagonal plans, a form that in esoteric traditions symbolizes the transition between the earthly square and the heavenly circle. Behind the walls of their fortresses, behind firmly sealed gates guarded by armed sentries, they performed rituals that even today researchers speak of in nothing louder than a whisper. The outside world saw stern, silent warriors bearing a crimson cross upon their chests, hurling themselves fearlessly against Saracen blades in the firm belief that death in battle was a direct portal to paradise. But what took place within the innermost circle of the order? What did the Grand Masters conceal? What words fell from their lips at the secret nocturnal chapter meetings? When the candles were extinguished and in the center of the hall, there remained only the mysterious idol, the very one that would fill inquisitors with terror for long decades afterward. Baphomet, the renunciation of the cross, the worship of a black cat and a speaking head. Was all of this the filthy fabrication of their enemies, or did the Templars, in the darkness of their own power, truly gaze into the eyes of the abyss? And did the abyss begin to gaze back? The shadow of Philip the Fair, King of France, was already gliding in their wake. The clock of their boundless power was counting down its final strokes in reverse. But before the flames of the pious consumed their flesh, we must come to understand exactly how they governed reality itself. Forget for a moment about magic and Kabbalah. The reality that lay concealed behind the walls of the Order of the Knights Templar staggers the imagination far more powerfully than any occult myth. They were not sorcerers. They were organizational geniuses who were centuries ahead of their time. In essence, in the impenetrable darkness of the Middle Ages, they created the first transnational corporation in the history of mankind. Let us return to the excavations beneath the Temple Mount. A historical fact. In the 19th century, the British archaeologist Charles Warren would discover beneath the ruins of the Temple of Solomon tunnels cut by the Templars and artifacts left behind by them. What were they searching for? Sacred relics, which in that era were valued more highly than gold. Ancient treatises on architecture and engineering. What they brought back to Europe secured for them the patronage of the most influential man of that time, Bernard of Clairvaux. It was he who lobbied on behalf of the order for an unprecedented document, the Papal Bull of 1139, Undatum Optimum. This document changed everything. From that moment forward, the Templars were exempt from all taxes. They could cross any border without hindrance. And most importantly, they answered exclusively to the Pope. No monarch, no local bishop held any authority over them whatsoever. It was a legal immunity that today's elites would not dare even to dream of. Yet the true revolution did not take place on the field of battle. It took place in the realm of economics. The Templars, who had taken a vow of poverty, invented the modern banking system. To travel across Europe carrying gold was tantamount to suicide. The roads swarmed with brigands. The Templars offered a solution. A pilgrim would deposit his coins at a fortified stronghold of the order in London, for example. In return, he would receive a sheet of parchment bearing an encrypted text and a unique seal. The first traveler's check in the history of mankind. With this document, he would make his way to Jerusalem, present it at the local office of the order, and receive his money back, minus a modest commission. To a medieval peasant, this looked like genuine alchemy, the transformation of paper into gold. But behind it lay flawless bureaucracy and the most sophisticated cryptography. No one was capable of forging their ciphers. Very soon the Templars ceased to be mere custodians of other people's wealth. They began to lend money, at interest, which the church officially forbade. Yet for the order consistently turned a blind eye to. They lent gold to the kings of England and France to wage their wars. They acquired entire islands, Cyprus, among others. In Paris they owned the Temple, a colossal fortress quarter, deep within which the state treasury of the French kingdom was kept. Monarchs came to them in supplication. Like every elite military organization, the order guarded its secrets. The rules strictly regulated every aspect of the brothers' lives, and the initiation of new members took place at night, behind firmly sealed gates. Why? Because they were the special forces of their era. Iron discipline, unquestioning obedience, a test of unbending spirit. There exists a theory that the scandalous ritual of spitting on the cross, which would later be described under interrogation, was nothing more than a simulation. The young knight was being prepared for the possibility that he might be captured by Saracens and tortured into renouncing his faith. The order was testing how a warrior would conduct himself under conditions of extreme duress. But it was precisely this secrecy that became their death sentence. Secrecy invariably breeds rumor, and rumor is the perfect weapon in the hands of a skilled politician. And such a politician was found. Philip IV, Philip the Fair, King of France, a hard, ruthlessly pragmatic, and utterly bankrupt monarch. Philip waged endless wars against Flanders and England. His treasury was a gaping void. He had already expelled the Jews and the Italian Lombards from France, seizing their property for himself. But money remained scarce. And worst of all, he was indebted to the Templars up to his crown. Philip gazed at the towers of the Paris Temple and saw in them a threat. Within his own kingdom there existed an army of 15,000 superbly trained warriors, with a powerful fleet at La Rochelle, an army that did not answer to his laws and possessed colossal wealth. Philip believed neither in demons nor in Baphomet. He believed in power and in gold. His minister, Guillaume de Nogaret, a brilliant jurist and a virtuoso of political intelligence, set about preparing an operation that was destined to go down in history as the largest police raid of the Middle Ages. The rumors surrounding the order were put to use. Nogaret's informants painstakingly gathered testimonies from renegade knights who had been expelled from the Brotherhood. All of these stories about secret idols and blasphemous heresy were meticulously documented. The Templars, convinced of their own invulnerability and shielded by the protection of the papal bull, failed to notice the net of the raid closing inexorably around them. They believed themselves to be beyond reach. That was their greatest and most fatal mistake. In the autumn of 1307, royal couriers raced across every corner of France. In their satchels lay sealed orders bearing strict instructions to open the packets simultaneously throughout the entire country at a single appointed hour. The date had been set, a Friday, the 13th of October, the day on which the world's first financial empire would be crushed by the machinery of state, not through sorcery, but through bureaucracy, torture, and fire. The dawn of the 13th of October, 1307, was damp and bone-chilling. In that hour, the bureaucratic machine of King Philip the Fair operated with a terrifying synchronicity, one inconceivable for the Middle Ages. In every province of France, from Normandy to Provence, the royal seneschals simultaneously broke open sealed packets containing their orders. The operation had begun. Hundreds of armed guardsmen burst into the preceptories of the order. They seized everyone indiscriminately, from the Grand Master down to the last stable hand. And here we encounter the first historical mystery that defies all logic. The Templars were the elite special forces of the world, warriors hardened in the deserts, whose fortresses had withstood sieges lasting many months. Why did they surrender without drawing a single blade? Historians offer a dry answer. They were caught off guard, and they were accustomed to obeying the law. But those who study the esoteric history of the order ask an entirely different question. Did Grand Master Jacques de Molay issue a secret order not to resist? Did he know that the earthly journey of the order had come to its end, and that the time had come to dissolve into the darkness? Whatever their reasons may have been, the reality proved more terrible than any prophecy. The machinery of state delivered these proud knights into the hands of the Dominican order, the Holy Inquisition. The wheels of justice began to turn, generously lubricated with blood. The king did not want dead Templars. He wanted their confessions. Knights who had survived Saracen captivity were thrown into the dungeons of Paris, Chinon, and Guisers. The rack, the iron boot, the water torture. For weeks they were denied sleep, suspended by their twisted arms. The human mind broke. And they talked. They confirmed every rumor that Guillaume de Nogaret had so painstakingly gathered piece by piece. They confessed that during initiation they had spat upon the cross, that they had kissed one another on the navel and at the base of the spine, that in secret chambers they had worshipped a bearded head and the idol Baphomet. Was any of it true, or was it the delirium of men broken by pain, willing to say anything to bring their suffering to an end? Today the Vatican acknowledges the charges were fabricated. The Templars were not Satanists. They were simply enormously wealthy. And so we arrive at the central intrigue. At the moment when Philip the Fair realized he had lost, while the inquisitors were breaking the bones of knights, the royal treasurers entered the Paris temple. They struck off the locks from the main vaults. The monarch savored the anticipation of mountains of gold, silver, and gemstones from across all of Europe gleaming before him. He expected all of his troubles to be resolved at a single stroke. But the vaults were empty. There was no gold. There were no sacred relics. The secret archives of the order, the greatest treasury of human knowledge, were gone as well. The king turned to the documents, and there he discovered an astonishing, documented fact. Literally a few days before the arrests, several covered wagons loaded to the brim with hay had departed from the Paris temple. Under cover of night they had moved toward the coast. Where? To the port of La Rochelle. Royal guardsmen galloped there as well to seize the fleet of the order. But when they burst into the harbor gaped empty. The great Templar fleet, dozens of heavy ships bearing crimson crosses on their sails, had dissolved into the autumn Atlantic fog. Together with the archives, the treasury, and the most trusted brothers of the inner circle. Where were they headed? To Scotland, where King Robert the Bruce had been excommunicated and recognized no papal decrees, to Portugal, where they simply changed their name to the Order of Christ, or perhaps to the shores of America, to centuries before Columbus. This mystery remains unsolved to this day. The greatest financial corporation of the Middle Ages had simply moved its assets beyond the reach of the machinery of state. Philip received only emptied lands and silent castles, and his vengeance was merciless. After 7 long years of investigation, in March of 1340, a pyre was lit on the Le de la Cite in the very heart of Paris. Jacques de Molay mounted the scaffold, the last Grand Master of the Order, an old man, broken by years of solitary torture. But in that moment something occurred that would inscribe this execution forever into the annals of the mystical. Facing death, engulfed by tongues of flame, de Molay suddenly straightened, looking through the veil of smoke directly into the eyes of King Philip and the envoys of Pope Clement. He renounced all of his confessions. He proclaimed the order unblemished and holy. And then, choking in the fire, the Grand Master spoke words that shook all of Europe. "Clement, unjust judge, I summon you before the court of God within 40 days. And you, King Philip, you shall not survive the year." Historians call it a coincidence. Skeptics smirk. But the facts remain facts, recorded in the royal chronicles. Exactly 1 month later, writhing in the agonizing pain of a sudden illness, Pope Clement V was dead. And that same autumn, while hunting, Philip the Fair suddenly fell from his horse and died of a stroke. A robust, healthy monarch of 46 years. The Capetian dynasty, which had ruled France for centuries, would be cursed and would fade away in a succession of mysterious deaths, madness, and betrayals over the following 14 years. The master burned, but his words took on flesh. The order was destroyed on paper, yet its shadow only grew longer. The ashes of the fires on the Le de la Cite had grown cold. The rulers of Europe breathed a sigh of relief. Official history had drawn its final line. The order of the Knights Templar was destroyed. But can a corporation truly be destroyed, one that possesses unlimited capital, the finest fleet in the world, and a vast network of agents stretching from Jerusalem to London? Of course not. They simply carried out the greatest rebranding in the history of mankind. Remember that fleet, the one that vanished without a trace from the port of La Rochelle. On the eve of the arrests, hundreds of ships loaded with treasure and secret archives. Where were they headed? History has left us remarkable clues, and the first of them points south. In Portugal, King Denis I proved far more farsighted than the French monarch. He refused to hand the Templars over to the Inquisition. Instead, he simply renamed them, and so the Order of Christ was born. The same castles, the same knights, the same blood-red cross on a white background. It was under these very sails bearing Templar crosses that, a century later, Henry the Navigator, Vasco da Gama, and Christopher Columbus himself would set out to conquer the world. Were they discovering new continents, or simply following old maps carried out of the Paris Temple? But the main body of the fleet, the core of the order with its supreme unknowns, sailed north, into the mists of Scotland. Why there? The answer lies in the brilliant pragmatism of the Templars. In 1307, the King of Scotland, Robert the Bruce, had been officially excommunicated by the Pope for the murder of a political rival, directly at the altar. Scotland was the only place in all of Europe where papal bulls ordering the arrest of the Templars were not worth the parchment they were written on. Outcasts sheltered outcasts. And here is a historical fact that makes official scholarship twitch to this day. 1314, the Battle of Bannockburn, the decisive engagement for Scottish independence. The forces of Robert the Bruce were facing the enormous, superbly armed English army of King Edward II. The Scots wavered. Defeat seemed inevitable. And then, at the most critical moment, A reserve force appeared on the crest of a hill, a detachment of heavy cavalry. They raised no battle cry. They moved in absolute, soul-chilling silence, in a flawless formation accessible only to hardened professionals. Their shields bore no coats of arms, and their cloaks were turned inside out. They drove into the English flank with such ferocious force and discipline that the great English army broke and fled in panic. Scottish chronicles called them small knights and peasants. Peasants, scattering the elite knightly cavalry of England with a perfect wedge formation. No, this was a blood debt being repaid. The Templars had settled their account with King Robert for the sanctuary he had provided. The knights dissolved into the Scottish clans, and the most devoted among them was the Sinclair clan. It was they who, a century later, in 1446, began construction of the strangest and most enigmatic building in Europe, Rosslyn Chapel. Walk inside today and your head will spin. This is not a Christian church. It is a pagan Kabbalistic sanctuary carved in stone. There is not a single cross to be found, yet hundreds of images of the Green Man, inverted pentagrams, and Masonic symbols cover every surface. But there is something there that shatters all of world history. Look at the stone arches. Carved into them with perfect botanical precision are ears of corn and leaves of aloe vera. But wait, Rosslyn was built in the middle of the 15th century. Columbus would not discover America until 1492. Corn grows exclusively in America. How did Scottish stonemasons know what it looked like half a century before the discovery of the New World? The answer is frightening in its disarming simplicity. The Templar fleet did not simply disappear. It crossed the Atlantic. They transported their archives and a portion of their treasure to a place beyond the reach of any European monarch, to America, long before Columbus. But the order understood. Carrying swords and white cloaks was no longer possible. They had to hide in the most open place imaginable, to become truly invisible. And so they returned to their roots. They remembered that they had been the architects who gave birth to Gothic, who in the Middle Ages enjoyed the same freedom of movement as the Templars, who had the right to cross any border without permission, who guarded the secrets of geometry and gathered in closed chambers known as lodges. The Freemasons, the surviving Templars, merged with the craft guilds of builders. The battle sword gave way to the trowel. The lance surrendered its place to the compass and the square. The blood oath to protect pilgrims was transformed into an oath to guard the esoteric secrets of the universe. The order did not die. It shed its old skin like a serpent, and an entirely new game began. A game that would lead to the birth of the modern United States of America and reshape the entire world order. History is not what is written in textbooks. History is an architectural blueprint. When in 1314 the fires crackled on the Le de Losset, many were convinced it was the end. They were wrong. It was merely a transformation. The order ceased to be a structure. It became a method. What is modern civilization? It is debt. It is credit. It is faith in paper that is worth billions. Who invented this? The Templars. They were the first to understand. To rule the world, you do not need to own the land. You need to own the pathways through which value flows. In the 18th century, when a new power was being born in the colonies of the New World, the United States, its architects were not merely laying out a city. They were building a temple. Look at the map of Washington. The city planners, many of whom were members of Masonic lodges, the direct heirs of the esoteric traditions of the order, designed the capital as a colossal magical map. Streets, squares, the angles of buildings. All of it obeys the laws of sacred geometry that 9 knights once carried out of the underground chambers of Jerusalem. A coincidence? In a world where every move of global corporations is calculated to the last cent, coincidences do not exist. Today they frighten us with conspiracy theories, but look at the facts. The central banks of the world, The Federal Reserve, the IMF, development banks. They do not answer to governments. They answer to their own internal logic, their own secret geometry of finance. They have built a system in which every debt is an instrument of control. The Templars invented the traveler's check to manage pilgrims. Today that same mechanism manages entire nations. We are all pilgrims on their roads, and every one of us carries their check in our pocket. Only now it is digital. Grand Master Jacques de Molay burned in the fire, but his order did not merely survive. It became the very fabric of reality. The Templars never left. They dissolved into the bloodlines of elites, into the symbols on banknotes, into the architecture of international treaties. They proved it. The best way to conceal the truth is to place it in plain sight. Look at the $1 bill, a pyramid, the all-seeing eye, inscriptions in Latin. This is not merely a design. This is a manifesto. This is a message left by those who believed. The world is a construction that requires the right blueprints. We live in a world they designed. And here is the central question that each of us must ask ourselves. If we are nothing more than building material in their grand design, what will happen when the architects decide it is time to rebuild? The fires of 1314 were only the prologue to a great game. The game never stops. And if you look carefully around you, you will see traces of the Crimson Cross where they should not be. In office towers, in the logos of banks, in the news feeds. They are near. They are the system.